Who are you with?
The State Democratic Party.
Okay, can I ask you to leave?
Is it possible I can get my donation back?
Yeah, I'm sure they can take care of it. I'll send someone out.
Thank you. It was cash.
Can he get his contribution back? He's with the Democratic Party and he was...
It's cash.
What's your name?
Brandon Clark.
Okay. Why then?
Because he was taping.
I was tracking.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, you're welcome to stay for the remarks. You just can't tape.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Clark? Yeah. So you guys can keep my donation if I can stay.
Okay.
Y'all are aware of the dynamics within our own party and trying to restore a governing majority that can frankly win elections and represent and advance conservative values. And so, to assure I am addressing everybody's concerns within the party, I tell them that I vote my way. Wrestling John Vick. Reason you haven't seen him this year. Because you should have seen how he turned out. I will tell you, and I apologize, some of you have heard this story. It's a little funny about Laura and I going to the hospital after this leg injury. The doctor called her out of the room and said, I need to talk to you privately. I'm really worried about David. I don't think it's just his leg. He looks like he has gotten worse since he got elected to Congress, and I'm concerned at what it means for how long you all might be able to stay married and how healthy he might live as your husband. And so my recommendation to you, Laura, is before he gets up in the morning, why don't you get up about an hour beforehand to prepare a hot breakfast? Have the paper waiting for him, the Tampa Tribune, not the St. Pete Times. About lunchtime, call and check in on him, send him a nice note. When he gets home, have a nice dinner for him, and then just let him watch baseball and go to bed. You do all of this.
The camera's not on, is it?
After all
The
of
recording
this,
audio. Okay, just check. No, I believe it is.
Laura comes back in the emergency room, and I'm laying there on the bed, and she has this very forlorn look on her face. And I said, sweetie, the doctor said. She said, the doctor just told me you're going to die. Folks, it is campaign season, and if you're not running for president in this room, please raise your hand. I think we're up over about 20 candidates right now, and I was kind of fascinated. I've had a lot of time to read, and so I was investigating some of the presidential campaign slogans. Think about it. We've got over 20, so you can have a little bit of a cocktail conversation about who has the best campaign slogan. I brought a few of them tonight. Hillary's is that she is a champion for everyday America, which to me is as preposterous as it is arrogant, because she is anything but an everyday American. We've seen others. Ben Carson, his is heal, inspire, and revive, which Laura reminded me sounded a lot like a spa, and must mean that all the volunteers have to drink coconut water. Bernie Sanders, are you ready? Is a political revolution is coming. Well, folks, Bernie and I don't agree on much, but we agree on that point. There is a political revolution coming. It's not the one Bernie Sanders thinks. It's the one that everybody in this room is working for in 2016. We will see a political revolution when we see this administration replaced by a conservative Republican administration. Marcos is a new American century. Rand has defeated the Washington machine, and Donald Trump, we all know, is make America great again. I have a lot of respect for Donald Trump, but I will tell you, I disagree with his slogan. I believe America stands today already as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. Our ways to make America great again. It has been great for 226 years since the founding of our republic. It will be great tomorrow, and it will be great the next day. We are a nation founded on freedom. This radical notion of human freedom, Jefferson's concept of the rights of man, that is not history. That is something we live out each and every day as Americans. As Americans, we live time a young man or woman stands up, volunteers, raises their hand, puts on their uniform for the first time, to protect our nation, to protect our community, to protect each one of us, to carry freedom and liberty around the globe to nations and people that cannot defend themselves. And as Colin Powell said, ask for nothing more than enough ground to bury our own. That, my friends, is the greatness of America, and it exists today. We have police officers on the front lines every day who are protecting our community and keeping us safe. We have first responders. We have teachers who stay after school to provide additional care for students, additional lessons for students. We have teachers who bring food to the classroom for students whose families cannot provide for themselves. We have ministers like my parents who are in the room today who minister to communities every day, the least among us. We have parents like a mom in Margo who flew to Washington on her own dime to fight for medical research for a cure for her daughter and others that suffer from similar conditions. We have a man who I've gotten to know over the past 16 months who is retired, and his only mission in life is to combat hunger here in the United States and abroad. The greatness of America is right before us every day. America is great today and has been for 226 years. What we must insist on, the reason we are in Republican politics, the reason we get behind King, is because we must insist on great leadership in government. It is a very different notion than what some candidates talk about in their campaigns. But it is about insisting on great leadership in government. Leadership that recognizes each day the teaching of the founders of freedom, what individual freedom really means, and what big government policies do to restrict that individual freedom. That recognize the power of the human soul to take care of another before government takes care of another. It also, to me, great leadership in politics, and Jeff alluded to this, means recognizing that we do have our differences in this very room, within our very party, within our community, within the country. We have great differences. But the notion of civility, and just words diplomacy, is the salve that cures all of those differences. You see, we are in this together as one nation, as one state, as one community. When we have these political campaigns, it is a contest of ideas. It is a fight not against each other, but a fight for the future of our country. And we can do that with civility. You know, I don't shy from the notion in this United States Senate race of running with civility, of trying to give voice to everybody within our party, within the state, within the country. I believe the solutions to what we face, the leadership we need in Washington, is wrapped in civility, it's not wrapped in anger, and it's not wrapped in things. If we are ever to solve the problems that we face as a nation, it requires leadership. Why? Because the issues we face are critical. We face an economy saddled with debt, crippled by overregulation, and for that, we all deserve solutions. But what we have seen out of Washington is more failed policy, and folks, this is not unique to one side of the aisle. We have much blame to accept for ourselves. We have a budget that has done nothing for decades. Consider this. How many times have you heard a member of Congress, a member of the United States Senate, come back to the district and say they voted to balance the budget, Republican or Democrat? And yet we sit on $18 trillion of debt. Debt that at the beginning of this president's administration was at $10 trillion. When he leaves, at the fault of both the administration and Congress, will have doubled and be at $20 trillion. But conservative policies will advance the greatness already today of our United States. But when we have a Congress controlled by Republicans that solves Medicare and Social Security problems by adding additional debt, solves tax reform by adding additional debt, and does so on the one hand, and tells you about all their solutions, and also over here tells you that they balance the budget, and it's a lie, well, I'm going to vote no, absolutely every single day. And so I do vote no, often against our own team. We face transportation and immigration policies that are listless right now. And we do these patchwork, short-term solutions that do nothing except drive up the long-term costs of government. And so I vote no. Some of you who follow our race, you will see something later this week that will mention that I am the only candidate in the race for United States Senate that did vote against $400 billion in new debt. The only candidate in the United States Senate race that voted against Obama trade. The only candidate in the United States Senate race that voted against Washington as usual. For those of you who follow politics closely, somebody pointed out recently that my record of voting against some of the go-along, get-along Washington leadership solutions is the same as my colleagues and friends Justin Amash and Thomas Massie. The irony is when I come home, people say, you voted with Nancy Pelosi. We're all friends in this room. I promise you I didn't vote with Nancy Pelosi. But as I mentioned, I did vote on conviction and principle against what I see as a sleight of hand that occurs on both sides of the aisle in Washington. It's time we create real solutions. I have introduced in Congress, and with hope that we can enact, what I call the alternative maximum tax. It stands up to the taxpayer and says, you know, there is nobody looking out for the level of taxation on any one individual at the federal, state, local, municipal taxing authority level. My legislation simply says this. No one individual should have to give the government more than they get to keep for themselves or their families. We should pass a budget that recognizes the out-year obligations of Social Security and Medicare, put it on the balance sheet as debt, own that debt, and then let's talk about how we reform these entitlement programs to ensure they remain the greatest programs in the world, but are actuarially sound and can remain there for generations to come. We need to enact true border security and immigration reform that finally recognizes once and for all we are a loving and caring nation made better by immigration, but we are also a nation of laws. And so, let's pass and enact legislation like catch and release. It says if you are here illegally and you break the law, you are returned home. Let's talk about how we reform legal immigration that recognizes the greatness of immigration to our United States of America. We have people who are desperate to come to the United States. Think about the millions of people who want to come to the United States. People aren't desperate to leave. We are that shining city on a hill that so many people want to be a part of. For those who want to come legally and contribute and participate in our economy, our society, let's make it easy. Let's offer solutions. For those who insist on breaking the law, let's responsibly return them to their country of origin and put in the hands of each person information on how to legally immigrate into the United States. Let's solve problems once and for all, like we've seen at the VA. Enact what I call a freedom card. I have introduced legislation that would put in the hands of every veteran what I call a healthcare freedom card that says if you have served in the United States military, you choose where you want to receive your health care. We saw a healthcare crisis within the VA that I believe is the fault of a bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. We have incredible people dedicated to serving veterans every day at Baypine, Haley, and throughout the VA system. The boots on the ground who have devoted their life to taking care of veterans. And yet we have leaders in Washington that have failed. My solution that I believe is a conservative answer, let's put in the hands of every veteran a freedom card that says you choose where you want to receive your health care. If you want to stay in the VA where so many veterans do, that's why it's there. But if you want to go outside, you choose where you want to receive your medical care. You don't need the permission of your government that you have served, that you have risked your life for, to decide where you receive your health care. It's a conservative solution that provides a patient-based metric of performance within our hospitals, and we can then tie the budget of hospitals throughout the VA system to the attrition rate or the addition of patients. And let's repeal the individual mandate in Obamacare. Think about this. We have voted over 50 times to repeal Obamacare. based on a personal decision of the